Hi everyone, welcome to my UK Global Talent Visa. It's my inspirational webinar where I will be interviewing a special guest today. So today I'll just give you a little bit of background about myself if you don't know me. I'll talk about a little bit about the Tech Nation announcement, what is the Global Talent Visa, the Stage 1 endorsement application and process, and I'll also obviously interview our special guest, Michael, and then you can also ask questions to Michael as well. So please have a think about some questions that you want to ask Michael or myself about his journey or the application process. Okay, so just a bit about myself. My name is Michelle Hewer. I am Vietnamese. I'm also Australian and I'm a British citizen as well. I'm a UK Global Talent Visa coach. I am also a recipient. In 2016, I received my Exceptional Talent endorsement. And because back then there were only, not many of us that applied and got it, Tech Nation wanted some ambassadors to share their story, which I did for 2 years. So I was the Tech Nation Visa ambassador and I helped a lot of people back then along the way. It became so successful. That's why I decided to become a coach and do it full time. The great thing about this visa, in 2019, just 3 years after I got my Global Talent Visa, I applied for indefinite leave to remain, which is like permanent residency. And then I was able to apply for my citizenship because I was on this visa. So I received that. The next step is the passport. So I'm still yet to get that because COVID happened and I just never got around to doing it. So 7 years I was in the UK. I based myself in Manchester, London and Newcastle. I actually lived in Manchester and Newcastle and traveled a lot down to London for my startup and, to have meetings and go to events and things like that. Before I became a tech entrepreneur, I was a solicitor in Australia, moved to the UK, got an entrepreneur's visa and got bitten by the whole tech, ecosystem, the tech bug, startup bug, and started my entrepreneurship journey. How I started with all this was after I got my visa, I wrote a blog about my journey because I said back then no one really knew about it. And then my blog went a bit viral and I just started to get lots and lots of inquiries about, this visa. I was one of the top 50 that actually received this visa back then. So there was a lot of questions about it. I mean, I was just talking to Michael earlier about the guidelines weren't very clear when I got my visa, when I was applying, in the last sort of 7-8 years that it's been running, the guidelines have changed and been, they've clarified it a lot, but back then it was very unknown, no one really knew. And also we didn't really know who got it as well. But now there's so many people that have it, you can always ask questions as well, which is why I do what I do. So over the years, I've coached about 1,000 people now, tech entrepreneurs, senior execs, and tech employees. My success rate is 90%. My clients, the biggest achievement is, clients receiving a result within 3 hours to 27 hours. Most recently, I think last month, my client submitted on a Thursday evening. And then by Monday morning, he got his endorsement. So if you take away the weekend, he was endorsed within 1 calendar day, which was amazing. We couldn't believe it. So they are taking, not as long to endorse, but the average is about 3 to 4 weeks of endorsement. So I've helped clients from WhatsApp, Sony, LinkedIn, Meta, Google, Zoom, all these big tech companies, but I also help startup founders, CTOs, UX designers, game designers, digital marketers, cybersecurity experts. There's a whole list of people that I help. This is why I love what I do, because every person, even though they have the same maybe job title, their story is unique and different, and this is why I love it. Everyone has a unique story to tell, and this process is about telling your story. And just a quick disclaimer, I only help with this stage 1 endorsement, not the visa application itself. I'm not an immigration solicitor, and if you need any immigration advice, I can refer you to a solicitor. Okay, so when I applied back then, and this is something that they want to see under the leadership criteria, which I'll go through, they want you to be, known as a thought leader in your field, be active in the tech community, either in your own country or in the UK, if you're living in the UK, so that if you are already doing it, if you do get the visa, you will continue to do it. You're more likely to. So these are just some of the examples that I have had over the years, especially being an entrepreneur and immersing myself with the tech community. Anything that's public facing, you can provide as evidence. So I've been interviewed, I've been quoted, I've been on panels, so TechCrunch, Business Leader, Media Tech Labs, these are the types of organizations I've worked for. So, these are the things that I used as my evidence as well. And you can as well. Like if, I was new to the country, but I found these organizations to, connect with, to do work with, and it just snowballs. If you only do one, it starts the process. You need to only do one, then someone else will find you and you write about it or blog about it, be active so people know who you are. So here, my blog is on my website, so you can read about my story here. It all just started with one blog and it just snowballed, and I'm so pleased that I did it. I was only just doing it to tell my story, and then it's led me to this, which is really great. These are some of my successful clients. I do work obviously for big tech companies, but also for, founders or people who work for these companies and smaller tech companies all over the world. And you can see we have such a diverse range of tech employees and entrepreneurs out there. So I'm really proud. These are the ones that share their story. Not everyone does. So I'm really grateful that my clients want to share their story to help others, because if you can see yourself, and if these people can get it, you can too. And they're all on my YouTube channel where I've interviewed them. So TechNation did announce that they were going to close in March. However, Founders Forum have now taken over. TechNation is still very much alive, and they are still accepting global talent visa applications or endorsements. There was a bit of uncertainty around that. In March, everyone was a bit worried, but they kept saying just proceed, apply as normal. Don't worry about whether or not it's closing. At the moment, they are still accepting applications, and they still were. Everyone was just really worried, but there's no need to worry. There wasn't a need to worry then, and there is still not a need to worry now. The UK Global Talent Visa in Digital Technology is one of the most popular visas in the whole Global Talent Scheme. So just continue to apply as normal. So what is it? It used to be called the Exceptional Talent Visa, which I got. It then had a rebrand called the UK Global Talent Visa, same thing. It's a special visa that was introduced to allow highly skilled tech entrepreneurs and talent who worked in the tech sector to apply for the right to live and work in the UK for up to 5 years. There's a two-stage process. The first stage is you have to be endorsed by TechNation for the digital tech stream. And then by being endorsed, you need to meet the strict criteria by TechNation. And then once you're endorsed, you can apply for the visa. It is more than a job application, even though it kind of looks like one with some of the criteria, but it is more than a job application. Someone said it's like a PhD of your career, which it kind of is. And, to distinguish the Global Talent Visa from all the other visas, which there's an umbrella Global Talent Visa, then there's other endorsing bodies in arts, architecture, fashion, science, engineering, digital tech. So the digital tech stream is the TechNation visa, because TechNation is the endorsing body. The great benefits about this visa, which I applied and why a lot of my clients apply, is it gives you the freedom and flexibility to work in the UK for up to 5 years. You can apply for indefinite leave to remain and British citizenship. You can also switch if you're already on a skilled worker visa, which a lot of my clients are. They can switch from a tier 2 to global talent visa, and the time spent in the UK counts, which is really important, because a lot of people are on other visas, and when they make a switch, their time starts again to apply for indefinite leave to remain. But the tier 2, definitely it counts. I was very lucky as well. I was on an entrepreneur's visa, which is no longer in existence, but my time in the UK counted under my entrepreneurs when I switched to global talent as well. The great thing also is if you have a family, you can bring your dependents with you under this visa. You can also register a UK limited company. So I have a lot of students who are on startup visas, who are on their student visa, and they want to register a limited company, but under the visa they can't. So they switch to global talent and then register a UK company to start working on their startup. You can also work for a tech company without the need for a company sponsorship. So this is where, people want to switch from tier 2. They, don't really want to be tied to their companies anymore, or they want to come from their own countries and they don't want to, or they can't get sponsored. So the Global Talent Visa stays with them. And I was very lucky when I wanted a break from my startup. I had my Global Talent Visa and I was able to work anywhere. I worked for a university, I worked for an accelerator, and there was no, the visa was no issue because I had my own visa. It's attached to you and it's quite cost effective in terms of the application fee. So I'll go through that in a second. So here are some stats. There's lots of people from different countries who apply. I think it's 90 plus countries who apply for these visas. There's a 54% endorsement rate, which means 1 in 2 are unsuccessful. There's been over 3,000 successful recipients since they started. I think there's a bit more. But the reason why the numbers are quite low is obviously the criteria is quite strict. But when I applied, and up until I think 2 years ago, there was a cap. So every year there was only 200 people that were able to get this visa under the digital tech stream. So it was quite stressful because not only do you have to meet the criteria, but you had to fit within that 200 cap per year. So that was an added stress. Now there is no need for that cap. It's like if you meet the criteria, you can be endorsed. You can be endorsed with talent or promise. Talent is more than 5 years experience. Promise is less than 5 years experience. And there's the stats there. There's more people applying for talent than promise, but these are just stats. I don't really mean just because the numbers are low there for promise, it doesn't mean you shouldn't apply. They're just what they're saying. Again, tech is a very male dominated industry. It's not surprising that there's 75-25 male female ratio. I'm a very huge advocate for diversity in tech, which is why I'm doing help with the Global Talent Visa, but I'm also a huge advocate for women in tech as well. So I help a lot of female clients as well. And once you get endorsed and you get your visa, you can join the Tech Nation Visa Alumni, which I'm a part of, and it's basically us in a Slack channel, and there's a huge network there. So once you are, in the UK, there's a community there for you to ask questions and meet people and go to monthly meetups and things like that. So that's available. So here are some more stats. As you can see, over the years, it's increased. And this one is really interesting because this is when they announced that Tech Nation was going to close, and applications just shot up through the roof. It was crazy. I was so busy at that time. People were, submitting crazy. But obviously, maybe it was a good thing in that it promoted the visa even more. And people thought, well, I've been looking at this for a year. If it's going to close, I'm going to apply. So there were a lot of applications then. So there was 2,850. And then the years start in April. So it's April to April every year. So far, I've got stats for the last sort of few months already. Since April to September, that's like nearly 6 months, 1,350 applications so far in 6 months. If you can have a look here, that was 2021. So that was for that whole year. And in 6 months, it's now that. So as you can see, it's getting even more popular. And I think it will maybe surpass last year. And some of more stats, these are 2020 stats. I haven't got more recent stats just yet, but these are the endorsement rate per country. So I do have a lot of clients from Nigeria who work with me because unfortunately they've got a 30% success rate. But it's not that, because they're not exceptionally talented or emerging leaders in tech. It's just, I feel like the way that you structure your application is really important. And I feel like maybe this is what a lot of people have trouble with. So if you have not been endorsed and, it's put you off applying again, it might not be because of you and whether or not you're exceptionally talented or not. It's the structure and seeing if you told your story in the right way. So these stats are just there to have a look at, but don't let it put you off. And again, here, these are just the type of people who were endorsed, but because it's a tech visa, obviously software engineers are being endorsed more, but, some people with business skills, they're equally being endorsed. So these are just stats, but don't let them put you off. So just quickly, there's a definition of what a product-led digital technology company is, because The application is very heavy, or they only accept people or evidence that where people have worked for a product-led digital technology company. And that is defined as a business that provides a proprietary digital technical service, product, platform, hardware as their primary revenue source. No consultancies, unfortunately, which I'll get to in a second. So if you work for or are a founder of a digital tech company that develops its own products and sells it for customers to license or sell, then that would be a definition of a product-led digital technology company. So no consultancies or outsourcers. The application pack is 15 documents, and that's why I said it's like a PhD of your career. So you would need, everyone needs to provide 5 documents first, which is your CV, your personal statement, and 3 letters of recommendations by experts. And these need to be experts in your field. And any letters that you provide as evidence, these people need to have known you for more than 12 months. Because if they know you for more than 12 months, then they can really attest and confirm why they think you are exceptionally talented or a leader or emerging leader in your field. It's just by relationship. You know, if the longer you know someone, obviously, the more you can talk about them and their skills. And then the next 10 documents that you need to provide consists of mandatory and optional criteria. And it gives you a choice. Other than the mandatory criteria, the optional criteria, there's 4 of which you need to pick 2 from the 4. So everyone's is a bit different. But the first 5 documents, everyone needs to provide the same. I'll get to that in a second, but the eligibility criteria is you can apply if you have a technical or business skill, which is really good. I know that this is a tech visa and people think that they need a technical skill, but equally important in the tech sector are people with business skills who help with growing, scaling, making investments, or being experienced in marketing, operations, and the like, to help their tech company grow. So business skills are equally as important as technical skills. The evidence is going to be different, and I help a lot of people with business skills because it's really hard to show innovation if you're working as a business person, or what your impact. And also with people with technical skills, it's easier to show your technical drawings and diagrams, but what's the impact of your work? So I help people with that. Here it's these specialisms are not considered eligible, and this is where I get a lot of people who work for outsourcers or consultancy companies that are ineligible to apply, people who work for agencies, any junior investors, they're not eligible, unfortunately. You can be an employee or founder, so it's not just a founder type of visa, it's for employees or founders, and interestingly 75% are employees and only 25% are founders, so it's for everyone. Okay. There are 2 categories: exceptional talent and exceptional promise. Now, if you have more than 5 years experience and you're later in your career and you can prove your leadership, and these are, if you're senior, you apply for exceptional talent. Now, if you have less than 5 years experience, you're not as experienced, you're not as senior, you're earlier in your career and you have a potential to be a leader. These are people who are either students, graduates, or a bit more junior. They can apply for exceptional promise, because you can't be competing against people who have got a lot more years experience in your field if you're only a graduate or a junior. So that's why they've separated it between talent and promise. There's a big difference there as well, which wasn't available, which wasn't known when I applied, but they did introduce it later on, that the real difference is if you are endorsed with talent, you can apply for your indefinite leave to remain after 3 years of being on the visa. If you are endorsed with exceptional promise, you have to wait for 5 years before you apply for indefinite leave to remain. That's the biggest difference as well. So the effect of being endorsed under talent or promise is the ability to apply for indefinite leave to remain. So this is the criteria: choose talent or promise. The mandatory criteria is showing your leadership in the field. It's not only your leadership within your organization that you have to prove, you also have to prove leadership within the industry. So it's your thought leadership. This is where a lot of people lack evidence in, because people do have lots of internal leadership, but the assessors want to know that you are a national or international recognition in your field as a thought leader. So I help a lot of clients with their thought leadership pieces. So you need at least 3 pieces of evidence, because these criteria, you need to submit 10 documents. So if you need to select 3 out of the 5 criteria, it's about 3 documents per criteria, which is 3, 3, and 3, which is 9. And your 10th document is picking this one of the criteria that you're strongest in, which means you need to give 4 pieces of evidence on 1 criteria, 3, and then 3, which makes it up to 10. Your optional criteria, 2 out of 4. And you choose 2 out of these 4, so you can show 3 pieces of evidence under innovation, under volunteer work that advances the tech sector. This is called your proof of recognition. Third is your impact. So if you've made commercial, technical, or entrepreneurial impact, and impact is really about your metrics. So you need to find out, revenue raised, product launches, how much money, how much products did you sell or develop, and things like that. And academic contributions is if you've made any academic contributions to university. So you need at least 3 pieces of evidence per criteria. Okay. The process, I know this is a very busy slide. The process is there's a stage 1 and stage 2. Stage 1 is your endorsement stage. Stage 2 is your Home Office visa application stage. You can't apply for stage 2 unless you've been endorsed under stage 1. Stage 1, there's 2 steps. The first step is you pay and register at the Home Office. Okay, and this is where you pay your fee. It used to be 456. Recently, it's now 500. They've now increased it to 524. So it's not a lot, not a big difference, but there is still an increase. So you pay and register at the Home Office. You've also got 15 working days to upload your documents onto the Tech Nation portal. And this is your step 2. You upload it and then you wait up to 8 weeks for them to make a decision. Okay, the average is 3 to 4 weeks. They can take up to 8 weeks. They can take 1 calendar day, which my client had. So it really depends. They do have up to 8 weeks to decide. And you upload all your documents onto the Tech Nation portal. When I applied, we had to send like an 880-page document to Sheffield. And I had to print everything out and I had to send it to them. So now it's all online, which is really good. Tech Nation then, or the Home Office then comes back and says you're successful or unsuccessful. If you are unsuccessful, you can appeal your decision and there is no fee. You've got 28 calendar days to appeal and they have 28 calendar days to respond. However, the decision basically your application goes to a new assessor to decide whether or not you are successful or unsuccessful. They take about a week to decide. The 28 calendar days they don't really take that long. It's usually about a week and they come back to you. If the new assessor says we agree with the first assessor, which means you are unsuccessful, unfortunately, that's the decision and you can resubmit. But the new assessor can also say that you're successful, which means they don't agree with the original assessor's decision. And then you've got your endorsement, which means you can apply for your stage 2 visa, which is great news. And I do help a lot of people with their appeals. Either they apply themselves or we apply together, but they're unsuccessful. And we appeal and they are successful in their appeal. And so it goes to stage 2, which means you have to apply for the visa. And I can't help with this because this is an immigration legal document. The application fee we used to be 152, now it's 192. Okay. You also have to do your biometrics, which is about £19.20. And the immigration health surcharge is not an application fee. It's the NHS fee that you have to pay to NHS. It used to be, it is £624 at the moment per annum, but it will increase to £1,035. We don't know when, because in July, Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, announced that it will increase, but there hasn't been confirmation of exactly when. So that is coming up. So now that is going to be a bigger cost. It's about 400 extra per year. So if you have exceptional promise, you're going to have to pay 1,000 times 5, so it's about £5,000 for just the NHS fee. So it is quite a bit. When I applied, it was 200, so mine was only 1,000, but they have increased over the years. So you will get your visa within 3 to 8 weeks. I was already in the UK when I applied, so mine came after I did my biometrics. It came within a week. So this process for me was very quick, and it is usually quicker this stage 2 process. Okay. Now, I do help a lot of people with their questions of, whether or not they're eligible, how do they present their documents, what is relevant, because when you're doing your application, in your head, yes, you've got these pieces of evidence, but don't forget, you've got to really fulfill the criteria, and that's what's important. And I think people forget that they have to keep looking at the criteria and structuring their evidence and telling the story, and don't assume that the assessor knows everything. It's really important to tell your story in the most clear and concise way that meets the criteria. Who are your experts? How do you show your innovations and impacts? And how do you show that you are an exceptional leader? And how much experience do you need? And if you've received an unsuccessful result, what should you do? Should you appeal or resubmit? Sometimes when I see applications that have been submitted and been unsuccessful, the best thing is just to resubmit. Don't worry about appealing, because there's so many gaps and you can't submit fresh evidence in your appeal. You can only reiterate the evidence that you've already submitted. So it's important to just get some advice around that. Okay. So my website has changed. I did mention this earlier. It has changed a little bit. Hopefully it's a bit more, it's easier to use and navigate. I've got an eligibility questionnaire that if you want to fill out to see if you are eligible. Being eligible is one thing. Meeting the criteria is a whole nother thing. So that's something that I can discuss with you. And if you are clearly not eligible, unfortunately, you can't move forward, especially those who work for consultancies or outsourcers. Like it's clear in the guidelines that those are not eligible. So I will get back to some of you. I know some of you have emailed me, and I have changed my website, and the automation process is a bit slow. So I will get back to you. So these are some of my packages that I can provide, and you don't need to go past the free discovery call just yet. I do free discovery calls after I assess your eligibility. I've got membership areas that provide my templates and video explainers. I've got strategy sessions that help you plan your application. And it's a really good session, because before you start on any projects, you need a plan. And this is what I help with. And then you can do it yourself, or you can upgrade to any of my other packages, which is my review package, which again it's part support, where I will review your application before you submit. So I can pick up any gaps or any irrelevant information to take out and put relevant information in. I do meet you in the middle to make sure you're going the right direction, and then meet you at the end before you submit. And I provide like a 15-20 page document assessing your application, and I will act as an assessor. Or you can avail to my premium coaching package, which is my most popular package. I provide one-to-one support for 8 weeks or longer, depending on how long it takes you, and I will handhold you every week throughout the process. And it is an intense process, but you will see the difference of me helping you along the way, making you accountable, making each other accountable to your application. So these are some of my packages there. Now, I have been a recipient and a coach, and these are my top tips wearing both hats. This is your chance to tell your unique story. It is about storytelling. Each piece of evidence needs a story. Your tech network is also very important. You're relying on people to support you by writing you letters of support and recommendations. This process is also about self-promotion. If you can't articulate your achievements, the assessor's not going to know them. So it's about you trying to, and I know it's hard because you're going to feel like you're bragging. You're not. It's not bragging if it's true. If you did the work and you can prove your impact by metrics and your achievements, it's not bragging. It's telling your story. Again, being eligible is one thing. Meeting the criteria requires a strategy in putting together all 15 pieces of evidence, and that's what I help with. And also, please contact me sooner rather than later if you need support. I can check your application. I can have a strategy session with you. I help a lot of people who do it themselves, which is fine, but I would love to see them before they submit, because once you submit and apply and you've spent all this time working on your application only to be unsuccessful, it's really disheartening. And I meet a lot of people in that situation, especially with people whose visas are expiring, and it's extra pressure. This is already stressful enough. Having a time deadline with a visa expiring, I've been there. It's hard. So please, the support is there. When I was going through it, I had no support. So I know how important support is in this process. and I know how stressful it is. So that concludes my webinar. I've got loads of resources on my YouTube, my website, and I hope you can check it out. And I would like to now introduce my client and a successful Global Talent Visa recipient, Michael.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, hi. So good to see you again.
No, likewise as well.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come on and sharing your story. As I said, not everyone does, which I would love them to do, but I know that you've taken some time out of your busy schedule and you've just landed in the UK. After securing your visa. I'd love for you to come on and introduce yourself to all our attendees who took time out as well to hear your story.
Of course. I am a cybersecurity professional. I've been working in the industry for about 3 years with experience in software engineering and infrastructure management in small, medium enterprises, as well as startups in different sectors. But I'm more heavy on my contributions to the tech community. So I've been part of communities in the US, in Nigeria, in the UK, both as a speaker, as a mentor, contributing to technical workshops, as well as just advocating for diversity and inclusion. And it's kind of like the goal is to help to close the skills gap in tech industry. So I engage and contribute to open source stuff, security research, and things like that. So meetups and the rest. So that's kind of my overall background.
That's amazing. And Michael, tell everyone, that which category did you apply for and get, the talent or promise?
Say that again, sorry.
The category. So there's exceptional talent or promise.
Yeah. So I applied for the exceptional promise, which was what I received. Yes. I applied twice though.
Yes, you did.
We'll get into that, would we?
Yeah. Oh, good. And Michael, your experience, I mean, yes, you are young, but that's exactly what Exceptional Promise is for, because you had done so much for the tech community. You were, obviously because of your age, you didn't have as much work experience, but you had so much community in this community experience, volunteer work. You had so much of that. So this is available to people who have that kind of experience as well. So volunteer work, really, you had a lot of that, which was very evident in your application. So I'm really pleased that you got it.
Thank you.
Now, why did you apply for the Global Talent Visa?
Right. So I've been to the UK for a couple of years now on the visitor visa. And as you saw in my application, and as you know of me, I am also contributing and part of different tech communities in the UK. So I'm quite familiar with the UK tech ecosystem, and it's been amazing being able to contribute to it remotely, and I wanted to be able to do that physically as well. However, as most of us know, the company sponsored visas typically would require you to be tied to a company, and I sort of wanted something flexible, which would allow me to do my own startup, work for any company I wanted without necessarily relying on them to keep me in the UK. So I saw the Global Talent Visa, and that was quite ideal for what I was looking for, and that's why I went ahead with it.
Yeah, so it's really good that even though you had a visitor's visa and you were visiting the UK, you used that time to learn about the UK tech sector, and you also immersed yourself in it remotely when you went back. So that's really good. That's showing a lot of initiative, so that we used a lot of that content in your application. So when you obviously you decided to apply for the visa, what challenges and hesitations, because there's always that. I mean, I had loads as well when I applied.
Honestly, the requirements just seem overwhelming. I actually took I think there's a little eligibility test on TechNation's website, and I took it like 3-4 times, and each time I took it, it would say, "I don't think you meet the criteria." So I was like, "Oh wow," and then I didn't really want to accept that, and I think I ended up taking your eligibility questionnaire, which led to us getting on a strategy call, because I realized, okay, there's something here. Let me see what that looks like, and we got on a 15-minute discovery call, and we saw we could proceed from there. So I went ahead with your strategy session to work out my plan, but then I still wanted to do the application myself because I was like, I think this is quite easy. So, however, I had challenges structuring my evidence. I
Yeah.
remember that it was really bad, and I wasn't successful the first time I applied. Um, and then for the second application, obviously, I came back to you and we went for the premium coaching session. And we used the feedback that we got from the first application to kind of strengthen the second one. But I still obviously had challenges because, as you saw, I was a bit reserved in talking about my achievements. And so it was nice that you were able to challenge me to provide more detail around this and be more precise and clear about everything I did in order to meet the criteria. So yeah, it was very helpful to have you there on the second time because that was a huge challenge for me. Even though I
Mm.
was doing that based on the initial feedback. But
Yeah, that's really interesting because you had two types of challenges. The first challenge is being overwhelmed and just the criteria, there's just so much in it and you just don't know where to go. But then even though you decided to apply, then there were challenges of structuring the evidence. So yes, there's challenges all the way. I'm sorry, but that's just the way this whole process is. And I'm really pleased I was able to support you through that because, you know, I've been through it myself and I definitely know. So that's really helpful. And, you know, overcoming your challenges. I know you had challenges at the beginning and also throughout, but how did you overcome them? Like, I know I was coaching you through it and I think you got better at it after me
yeah, I
telling you
think
to do
after a
stuff.
couple of times of you know you probing in, I kind of got the pattern or the way of thinking.
Mm,
So I think over time of having those calls with you at some point, because I know there were certain points I had to go off and try to do it on my own and then come back to you. And so at those
yeah.
points, I was able to build on what I'd already seen in those sessions with you. So I think that was quite helpful, just being able to learn and adapt to it. Obviously, I
Yeah.
haven't perfected it, but at least it helped for the application, and I got that. So
You did pretty well in the end. It was almost like you were actually preempting what I was asking you when you were doing the some of your documents, which is really good. And that's all I wanted is just so you can see, like saying things in one sentence is not enough. You need to talk more detail about what you're trying to say. Tell your story, and you are getting better at it. Okay, so let's look at your, I know we've got two applications here and we can talk about them in terms of who were your experts that we ended up choosing, you know, even the first and second, because we did change them.
yeah, we did. I think we did change them, but I think they weren't really people. So my experts weren't people I had worked with in an employment situation, because I was more heavy on less of work experience and more of community experience. Um, we looked at my network. So what communities have I been a part of? Which ones have I impacted the most? And we sort of went with the experts from different ones. I know on the first application, I chose an expert that wasn't, he couldn't really speak very well of my achievements, and that kind of affected the application. So we swapped that out on the second one and went with someone else who was more prominent, as well as also being able to properly speak to
Mm.
some things I had done in their own community.
Yeah, so you raise a really good point. These experts need to have a public facing profile and they need to be experts in their field. And then the second thing is they need to know you for more than 12 months to vouch for you, because you can't just pick people that don't know you. They need to write a 2 to 3 page letter about how great you are. So it's really challenging. And this is why your network is so important, to pick these people, because even if you have 10 people, when you really look at the guidelines, they end up being like 2 or 3 out of
Yeah.
the 10 that we have. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so then let's look at the criteria. What criteria did we select?
So on the first application, I went for leadership, which is the mandatory one, and then the two optional ones were innovation and proof of recognition. I had lack of success on innovation because that's a very tricky one for me, particularly with my own experience. And so on the second one, I went for mandatory leadership, impact, and proof of recognition. So I swapped out innovation for impact, which was easier to evidence as opposed to innovation.
Yeah, I agree. I think innovation is very subjective, and it's really hard to show, because you need to show, as a promise candidate, examples of innovation, but it needs to be on a new digital field or concept, and you need to provide 3 examples. And if someone who doesn't have a lot of work experience, it's really hard to find. So we swapped that out and chose impact instead, because we could see that you made more impact there, or we could provide the evidence. And that's another thing. There's one thing saying that you can do stuff, it's providing the evidence. Yeah, and you're laughing.
No, and I think that was one of the things, wasn't it? Because
Mm,
we struggled. There were certain things I had done, but I was like, oh, I have nothing to show for this at the end of the day. But,
yeah. And I guess moving forward, you can use that in your work. I think now when you're working, you'll be like, how can I keep this as evidence if I need it later on?
yeah, I have a document where I'm tracking everything I'm doing at work.
Excellent. Well, good, because you never know when you're going to need it, right?
Yeah,
So if this process, if anything, it's taught you to keep everything, um, yeah, and don't store too much, but know that it's there, that you should keep. Um, okay, so let's look at, when did you submit your applications? Timing is really important, because people need to know, like 8 weeks is a long time, and I'm sorry, but that's what happened to you. But like, it's good to know the timing so that you can track it. There's no way to track your application. There is a little trick that I've got, but in terms of
yeah.
just knowing the average. So talk about your first and your second application, if you can.
Yeah, so for the first application, I submitted it on the 12th of January this year, and I got a response on the 31st. So that was actually
Mhm.
pretty quick, 2 weeks.
Mm.
However, that was unsuccessful. I appealed that decision, and they came back to me 1 week later to say it was still unsuccessful. But for the second application, I submitted that on the 4th of May, and they came back to me on 28th of June, sorry. So it was exactly 8 weeks. And I know why it took that long was because this was the time Tech Nation was transitioning to on the Founders
Yeah,
Forum. So that was probably why they literally
yeah,
maxed out the 8 weeks. But the
yeah,
visa process was pretty quick. It was or at least the standard time, it was less than 2 weeks, or just about 2 weeks.
yeah.
And they came back to me on that one.
Yeah, it was unfortunate because I helped clients around that time as well, as you, and we were trying to track, all my clients' progress in terms of submission and receiving a response. And around that time, unfortunately, Tech Nation closed on the 31st of March, and then they had a huge backlog. Like they had 600 applications in 2 months, and that's a lot for them. They don't usually have that. So everyone was submitting, and you got caught in that backlog, but now it's completely cleared. So unfortunately, it was 8 weeks, but you got it. That's amazing after not being successful, and then you got your visa. But overall, 8 weeks plus 2, so 10 weeks. It's not too bad.
Yeah, yeah. It was.
Yeah.
I mean, if you start out, if you check the timeline, it
Mm.
does say 10 weeks. So that's
Mm.
like it didn't exceed what they
Yeah.
said is the highest
Yeah.
you would have.
Yeah.
So I was fine with it.
Yeah. And it was still within this year. Okay, so now that you've been through the process twice, and I know, gosh, you've got first application appeal and the second application. What's your advice? Because anyone who didn't get through it, they learn so much the first time. So your advice is critical now because you've gone through it twice.
Yeah,
What would you tell applicants who are looking to apply?
yeah. So I think the one thing I would probably emphasize is don't downplay your achievements because that will affect your application. And I think it's very common because there's certain people like myself who can't really. It almost feels like bragging, like you said earlier, but it's not bragging, but it just feels like it's you tend
Mm.
not to do it. Um, but yeah, don't downplay your achievements. You really want to structure your application very well because I found that in my initial application, I was doing more of a quantity over quality. So I was just putting everything everywhere, and it was all over the place and didn't make any sense. So you want to have good structure, have put a lot of detail in, and I think that strategy session helps at the start to help you plan and map out your application. So you kind of start with one story and build with it. Um, and then don't ever assume the assessor knows anything. I found that I was writing my application as if the assessor had lived my life. And then I remember when you took it to look at it from an assessor standpoint, you were like, this doesn't make any sense. How did this happen? How did that happen? And that led to me bringing out more detail So it's always good to have someone to check to make sure you're telling your story in the right way. And that was very helpful to have you there throughout the whole process to really help me articulate the story and highlight my achievements. So those would be my advice for anyone who is looking to go through this process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like even though you were unsuccessful the first time, I feel like you needed to go through that process, because by the time you got to me the second time, even though we did speak the first time, you learned a lot about yourself, and you learned,
Yeah.
it's always hard to read the assessor's feedback. It really is. But then you have to just take a step back and look at it from the assessor's point of view, and say, okay, well, what was it that I did that they didn't see? And there were lots. There were lots of, I mean, and also the guidelines as well, like no external links, which you had so many links. That was a big one. That was a big one.
Yeah, that was a big
Simple,
one,
but big.
honestly. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So just,
And I think,
I forgot. Yeah, go on.
oh no, yeah, I was just gonna say, like, one thing to remember is the process is gonna be challenging, obviously, because you're gonna be taking a lot of time to write these articles out, or these documents, these evidences. So it can be really challenging. However, once you start the process, my advice would just be keep yourself there, keep yourself engaged in it fully until you finish it, because it's going to be really hard at some points. I know, like, for a couple of weeks, I wasn't really sleeping well because I'd finish work, I have to go work on my documents and stuff like that. Um, and I'm not saying this to discourage anyone, but it's just to know that you're going to have to, those are challenges you're going to have to face. But once you start it, it's best to just take your time, finish it up, and know you've done it and it's over. And now I'm able to get my sleep, at least for once I settle down. But you know,
Sleep is important. I didn't sleep for 3 months when I was doing this, because I don't think people realize. And when I speak to my clients, I ask them what's on their workload, what's on their plate. Like, think of your plate and tell me what's on your plate, and what can come off your plate for this to come into it, just for a couple of months, because it's a whole thing. Like, it's an extra thing you need to do in your life, and this is life admin, it's not work. So it's easy to say, oh, I don't really want to do this document today, but you had Michelle at you every week saying, Michael, have you done this? Have you done that? So I guess I kept you accountable and kept you going. I mean, I'm sorry that I robbed some of your sleep, but
no, I mean, it was to my success at the end of the day, so I can say I'm happy now.
See, now you can sleep. Now you can sleep soundly. Excellent. Now, I forgot to ask you, what was the main difference between your first and second application? I know we kind of touched on it, but just to just to summarize it for people, the main
Yeah,
differences within your first and second.
so I'd say the second application was mostly built based off the feedback from the initial one. And so we changed the criteria from innovation to impact because I had more evidence for impact. I changed one of my experts again because they I found someone else who could speak more to my accomplishments and who was more had a better public profile. My first application was unstructured. Yes, I know I had help with the strategy session.
Mm.
However, the second compared to the second application, the second one was well structured, and we had more story and detail in there, as well as we went for more of quality over quantity. So that was a difference in the second one from the first one. And of course, I had you there to help me throughout the whole process in the second one.
Yeah, to rob you of your sleep. No. Yeah, I'm really pleased that, I'm really pleased you came back, because we had such a great strategy session the first time, and you had so much to say about the types of evidence. But I was able to really help you the second time round, and to look at your evidence and say, no, Michael, we don't want that. Let's do this instead. But the great thing is we had feedback from the first application. Like, that was a huge part of it. So the first one was a practice run, and you wouldn't have learned so much if you hadn't done it the first time. And I know it was really stressful, but you know um you know nothing's easy, and now you really appreciate this even more. I mean, and you did it. You were able to do it.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I'm even more happy for is the fact that after the first application was it was unsuccessful, even though I knew I was submitting a new one, I still went ahead to appeal because that helped us to get even more feedback from from the access. I mean, we had the initial application
Yeah.
feedback, and then we had the feedback from the appeal. So you had
Yeah.
like, because I found that in the appeal they sort of go into more detail as opposed to the first one where it's you're like, what is he writing here? So that
Yeah.
not being afraid to appeal, I think, really helped us because we
Yeah.
had more to put into the second one.
Absolutely. So you basically got feedback from two assessors, right? Because your appeal goes, even though you didn't tell me that you were going to appeal, you did it, which is great because we had already decided to resubmit. But it was perfect because I was focused on your application with you. You appealed, and then you came back and said, Michelle, I've got some more feedback. And I said, great, that's really good that we've got it, so we can, refine even more. And it was really useful. And yeah, it was fine. Like, I know it was hard at the time, but now looking back, you don't remember
Laugh
those
about
bits.
it.
It's all a blur. No, it was really good. I'm so proud of you for sticking with it and continuing, because a lot of people can just, as I said, can just not, they take it so, to heart, which it is, because it's so hard to read the feedback and to not bother. But you were so focused and you wanted this, and you continued. And I think persistence and perseverance is key in this. You never gave up.
Yeah, that was
That's
right. Yeah.
yeah, that was one thing I noticed, is you never gave up. So that was easy for me to keep working with you. But yeah, just probing you and getting you to talk about your achievements even more, clarifying it. What did you do? How did you do it? That was a process, but you got there in the end. It didn't take long. Yeah. Okay, so what are your exciting plans now? You've just arrived in the UK, which is great. You got your visa, and yeah, actually, no, I want you to tell you the story, because this is what happened to me. But tell me the story of how you landed in the UK and what happened at immigration.
That's funny. So I was at immigration, and um, it's so funny how okay, I was at immigration, and then I gave her my passport, and she was like, she looked at it, it was like, how did you get this visa? And it was basically just a moment of going back and forth. She was trying to understand how I was endorsed as a global talent. Still asked me, where did you school? What did you do? And then it went from like series of trying to because she didn't really, you could tell that she didn't really know what the visa was, because she started asking me what company is sponsoring. I was like, no, it's not company sponsored, it's a self-sponsored visa. And it's, she's like, how are you going to support yourself? I started saying, I work remotely, I have savings, those sort of things. And so it's just a moment of real of laughter, because at some point I was answering her and I didn't know when I started laughing. I felt bad because I thought they were going to deport me because I was laughing. No, but it was, yeah, immigration, and that just helped me to know that immigration didn't really know. They don't really know what that visa is. So you have to kind of like be prepared to explain to them what it is you have that they're looking at.
So now you can say, well, the UK Global Talent Visa is, you can just remember what I just said. It's about detail and clarity, Michael. Yeah, it applies to this, to talking to immigration as well. Because when I caught up, just let everyone know, when I caught up with Michael earlier this week to talk about the webinar, the first thing I asked him, because I knew he had just landed in the country, was, how did it go at immigration? Because it happened to me. It happens to all my clients when they arrive in the UK, is immigration does grill you about this visa because they don't know what it is. They ask you what your talent is, and you feel like you want to joke around, but no, you can't joke around, but you have to kind of explain it. And this global talent visa it takes a lot to explain to someone who doesn't understand, like, so what is your talent? Why did you get it? And you're like, oh, you have to be endorsed, and yeah, it's a whole thing. But no, it's yeah, and just so you know, you're going to get this question every time you come into the country when they see this visa. So you just have to remember that you're going to be asked the same question. But you're fine. You're fine. You can laugh because you have the right to be in the UK.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. Okay, so what are your plans now? What are your exciting plans now that you're in?
Well, obviously this, I'm still trying to settle down.
Yeah.
But short term, I'm just looking to reintegrate back into the UK like ecosystem, as well as just the general life here and how it all sort of works. And then long term, I'm looking to still continue my contributions to the community, but also looking to do my own startups. So I have a few things planned. I'll just be waiting to implement them over the next
Yeah.
couple of months or year. We'll see
Time.
how that goes.
You need to catch up on your sleep first.
I know,
um,
exactly.
and where did you decide to base yourself?
So I'm gonna base myself southwest.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm Bristol is a good city to sort of for
Yeah,
textiles as I've heard, but I'm not staying directly in Bristol. I'm staying
yeah,
around it. So
yeah.
I'll just be closer to some of those cities and then probably commute into London or any other city when it's necessary.
Mm.
But I'm going to enjoy the countryside for a bit, so I'm in Plymouth.
Ah, lovely. I've been to Plymouth, yeah.
Yeah,
That's lovely. And it's you can be in London very quickly, or you can move. You've got time, you've got 5 more years to apply for your indefinite leave to remain. And yeah, you can just enjoy being in the UK and not worry about visas, because this is it. Like, this is your route to settlement now.
yeah, exactly. Yes, quite happy. Looking forward to what the next 5 years holds. We'll see.
I know, and I can't wait to see you in 5. I know I'll see you before then, but like I can't wait to just follow your journey, and see you, settled in the UK. It's really nice, and I'm so pleased I could help you get there. And I want to congratulate you.
Sure.
I think you're my youngest client.
Yeah, good. And I would just say, just maybe as an extra additive, I think I'll say thank you because one of the greatest struggles I know for like a couple of people who are deciding whether to go for it, like have external help, like pay someone to help them or not, is usually the fact that most people feel that they're only helping them for the money. But I could tell, like at least with you, Michelle, we it wasn't just about the payments, which is quite a good thing to see. In case anyone is wondering, yeah, Michelle she's more of a dedicated person to the client than she is to the money. Just still pay her though. Just know that she's more dedicated to the client.
Oh, thank you so much, Mark. It really means a lot. And yes, I do really care about all my clients and anyone that I speak to. I've been through this process. I'm an immigrant myself, to many countries that I lived. I'm Vietnamese, but I'm an immigrant in Australia and in the UK as well. And I'm genuinely excited for you, and also genuinely want to help you achieve your goals, because I've been there and I know how hard life as an immigrant is. So any which way I can help you, and I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad that you chose me to help you as well. I'm always grateful for all my clients that I support, and I hope we can become friends, and I think we are, in this journey, and still want to see you around, especially online, but you're part of the Tech Nation Visa alumni now. You're part of our group. So, yeah, great. Thank you so much. Now, I know we're running over time, but I'm going to leave some time, a little bit of time, if you can stay, Michael, for some questions, if anyone has any. That would be great. I don't have any questions on the chat, but there's questions in the Q&A if you want to answer them, or in the chat. But this is your chance, because if you don't ask any questions, we're going to go. Bike says congratulations, which is good. If you're still here, if you have access or can see, if you can type an emoji, I would love to see you congratulate Michael with an emoji. I'm going to choose. I get lots of really cool emojis that come up, but there you go. You've got one. I'm going to send one. If anyone wants to, so you can see them pop up. Oh, look, they're all coming up, which is really nice. Yes, Bike, do you want to ask about the mandatory criteria? So there's on my eligibility questionnaire, there's a list of 10 examples of the types of leadership examples you can provide. As I said, there's internal and there's external thought leadership. With Michael, I don't have your application in front of me, but can we remember what your leadership examples were?
Yeah, I still remember it.
Good.
Sorry. My leadership examples, one was a speaking contribution. So, oh no, contributions to um, it started off with speaking, and then it led into just being active in a community that was pushing for something. So it was
Mm.
it's the YCSC group, and then pushing for security, strengthening cybersecurity in the Yorkshire region. And I was able to just show some evidence as to how I've been able to be part of that, even though I'm not physically in the UK. So speaking at their meetups, as well as also contributing to it with external resources. And then we had another one which was just evidencing that I was part of a US organization that was trying to help in terms of application security. So it wasn't even anything to do with my day-to-day work, because I recognized, I think at the time of application, the company I was working for was not a tech company. There weren't consultants as well, but it was just one of those companies. There's nothing to evidence within that company because it's not a digital-led company. So I was using things I had done in the community for my leadership, and that was quite fun.
Yeah. So by how you'd structure that evidence is you would think of like three examples or topics of leadership, and then from that example, so for example, Michael had the YCSC? YCSC. So that's a Yorkshire Cybersecurity Cluster. So that was the theme. So we talked about his involvement in that group. And we have a letter, and we had like evidence of him speaking and things like that to show his thought leadership in that cluster. So that was one piece of evidence, 3 pages. And then we had another piece of evidence, which was in the form of a letter to talk about his leadership in the field in that. And then you'd have another piece of evidence. So that's why the structure is really important. 3 examples, 3 pages, okay, each. So that's 9 pages. So it's really hard to, I have to be very clear about, how we structured it, because it's all about the structure and how you tell your story and what theme you're going for to show your leadership. And so, you look at your last 5 years. You can only go as far back as 5 years. But in terms of telling your story, it can be the last 5 to 10 years, but the evidence that you provide is in the last 5 years. Chanda, he's saying, thank you so much. You're welcome. Regarding the recommendations from companies, should it be on a company letterhead or emails work? What do you think, Michael?
Sorry, let me pull up that question. Which one?
Do you?
Endorsement recommendations from previous company. It's best as a company letterhead. That's more recognizable, or will stick more with the assessor.
Yeah. Now, sometimes employees can't use company letterheads, which might be their policy. So what you would do is get them to put it on their own personal letterhead, so you can make it up with their name really big and their address, and just say that it's them and they're writing in their personal capacity. So that's fine, so long as it looks like a professional letter. Yeah,
I think that's kind of what we did for mine at the end of the day. Most of them were personal letterheads, just indicating that they work for a specific company.
Yeah, definitely. So but it still looked like a professional letter, even though it wasn't a company letterhead. Yeah. Okay, so someone, a data engineer with 5 years experience, when should you start filling the application? And if there's any hard-coded slots to be stamped in a year by UK. So in terms of your experience, you can apply anytime. You can start preparing. Preparing takes a good few months. So you can start collating your evidence. You're more than welcome to have an eligibility call with me, and then have a discovery call, and then we can sort of assess, and then I can answer some of your questions there. But I feel like you can start anytime to prepare your application. Yes. Now, there are no slots to be stamped in a year by UK. As I said, there's no, it's unlimited endorsements. So when you apply, is when, after they assess it, you can be endorsed any amount. And once you fulfill the criteria, you can be endorsed. Can you submit any technical proposals or technical documents? Yeah, you can, but just be mindful of the 3-page limit. Be mindful of why you're submitting it. If it's under the innovation criteria, you'd need to explain why is what you did innovative. How and why is it innovative? Because as Michael said, you can't assume the assessor knows. So if you're submitting a proposal or a document for a client, like, what is it? Can anyone attest to that? And why is it innovative? Is it a new digital field or concept? So always look at the criteria when you're thinking about submitting any pieces of evidence. And is it in the last 5 to 10 years? Oh, sorry, 5 years. I've got the other question in my mind. The last 5 years. Yeah. Okay, I've got one question. If you've got any other questions, I'm going to go soon so Michael can leave. Does it need to be published? It depends, yes, preferably, but sometimes things are confidential. So whatever you can find that's public facing, yes, we want that. But if it's confidential, or if you can't, if it's internal, you can also provide it. But again, it really depends on who's vouching for you, and what the evidence is. Putting it on social media is one thing, that's a promotion, but there needs to be a story behind it. As we mentioned, it always has to be a story behind every piece of evidence. Why does it fit in that criteria, and why are you showing it? So yes, you can provide photos, but again, there needs to be context in anything that you provide. So Michael, I asked you to provide context, any photos, any clippings, why, how. You're laughing again.
We had like little write-ups around the images, didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
loads.
looking back, it was definitely the best approach. I wouldn't have thought that in the time.
Yeah, no. Okay, so I'm going to leave it. We're a bit over, but thank you so much for coming. And Baig, I will come back to you. I'm sorry about not. It's there. And thank you so much, Michael, for your time. I know you want to get into the UK, you want to immerse yourself, but I really appreciate your time in spending with us and to share your story. And I wish you all the best of luck.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks everyone for coming.
Bye, everyone.